Caribbean Newsline is brought to you by the Barbados Tourism Marketing Inc.
Improved prospects for Liat with staff agreeing to pay cuts. Our top story in Caribbean Newsline for Monday, April 1st from the CMC News Center in Bridgetown. I'm Dawn Paris. Good evening. Antigua and Barbuda's Prime Minister Gaston Brown says he's confident the much-needed restructuring of regional airline Liat can proceed now that workers have agreed to a cut in wages and salaries. Last week, the Leeward Islands Airline Pilots Association agreed to the salary reduction, joining other unions representing workers at the Antigua-based airline. After a 6-hour meeting last week involving the leaders of the two largest shareholder governments, Barbados' Prime Minister Mia Mottley and her St. Vincent and the Grenadines counterpart, Dr. Ralph Gonzalez, the trade unions had agreed to the pay cut in principle, and Lialpa subsequently got on board. Speaking on his privately owned radio station, Prime Minister Brown said if the workers had not cooperated, it could have led to Liat's collapse.
Between Prime Minister Motley and Gonzalez, they had decided, hey, look, they're not having any of it. As far as they're concerned, if the staff did not agree to carry some of the burden, they said that they would have collapsed the airline. Now, the reality is they have more than 60% of the shares of Liat combined, which places Antigua and Barbuda in an invidious position in that we're not in a position to block any such collapse, even though we continue to fight for a restructuring of Liat. And the fact that the pilots and the pilot union and the other unions have agreed to cooperate now and to take a cut, I think that should now help us to pursue the restructuring plan.
The shareholder governments have been seeking to get other Caribbean countries to contribute $5.4 million in emergency funding to keep the airline in the sky. 11 destinations have been asked to respond to the airline's Minimal Revenue Guarantee (MRG) proposals, under which flights could be cut if governments are not prepared to fund them.
So the whole idea is to increase the operational efficiency of Liat, to reduce costs, while at the same time increasing revenue, primarily through the charging of a minimum revenue guarantee to make sure that the routes that are not profitable, if countries want Liat to continue those routes, then they have to pay for them. And I really think that finally the hard decisions have been taken and that the prospects for Liat are far better than they were perhaps a few weeks ago.
Guyana's opposition leader Barrett Jagdeo says opposition legislators with dual citizenship will not tender their resignations but will stay away from sittings of the National Assembly. At the same time, he declared that the government of Guyana is being duplicitous by not removing its members of parliament who are dual citizens. Jagdeo appeared on the Jumpstart morning show on radio where news source chief editor Gordon Mosley questioned him about the dual citizenship issue. Jagdeo says none of the opposition MPs will attend any sitting of the National Assembly, so they don't have to resign. The High Court and the Court of Appeal both ruled in the no-confidence cases that members of Parliament who are dual citizens are not qualified to be members of Parliament in keeping with the constitutional requirements for the post. Both the government and the opposition have members who hold dual citizenship. Minister of State Joseph Harmon last Friday announced that members of the coalition government with dual citizenship would not be removed from the National Assembly when it holds its first sitting since December 21, 2018, when the no-confidence motion was passed against government. The opposition leader described the government's position as illegal, immoral and unheard of, saying that at least 4 members of the government should step down because they hold dual citizenship.
The government is so duplicitous. It urges us to respect the ruling of the Court of Appeal, which we have have said we will respect, and that's why we have taken the case to the CCJ. And then the government itself does not want to respect the ruling of two of our courts, which says that dual citizens are illegal. And they said they will convene parliament, and the dual citizen, the four government dual citizens will attend parliament. So on one hand, they sought to invalidate Charan Das's vote on the basis that he was a dual citizen, and now they would rely on the vote of dual citizens to pass bills, although two courts have ruled that it's illegal. That is the duplicitous thing. And coming back...
You have dual citizens on your side. So
yes, and that is why we made it clear that they will not attend.
No, they've not resigned. So
No, but the thing is that they will not be at any sitting of the National Assembly. So they don't have to resign.
When reminded that the law governing dual citizenship and ineligibility to serve as members of parliament has been around for several years, including under his government, the former president said lawmakers had turned a blind eye to the issue in the past, and it was the current government that took the issue to court.
They took that matter to the court when they challenged Charan Das's citizenship. This government did. They had two adverse rulings, one from the High Court and one from the Court of Appeal.
Yeah.
So they took the matter. The matter is now clarified by our courts. There's never been a court ruling on the matter, although most people think that it was a transgression that everyone overlooked. And now that you have two rulings, you have to comply with those rulings. At least say, we'll stay away from the sitting of the parliament. Here, as usual, the government arrogantly declared, we are going to go to the parliament, and our dual citizens would be there too.
Antigua and Barbuda's former Attorney General, Queen's Counsel Justin Simon, is calling on Caribbean countries that have not yet made the Caribbean Court of Justice, CCJ, their final court, to hold a simultaneous referendum on the matter. Simon said it was unfortunate that the electorate in the Twin Island nation, as well as in Grenada and St. Vincent and the Grenadines, had voted against the move to replace London's Privy Council with the Trinidad-based CCJ as their final court of appeal. The Dominican-born jurist contended that the CCJ comprises some of the most brilliant legal minds in the region, and he said it was disappointing that many countries are still not fully on board. The CCJ was established in 2001 as the region's final court, and while most CARICOM countries are signatories to its original jurisdiction, only Barbados, Belize, Dominica, and Guyana have signed on to the appellate jurisdiction of the court. There are calls in Trinidad and Tobago for the government to expunge all minor marijuana offences, and all mansions of Rastafari and the Movement for Social Justice are asking for this to be done at least until legislation decriminalizing marijuana goes into effect in the Twin Island Republic. We get more in this TTT News report.
One representative of the MSJ is calling for government to ease the strain on persons who are charged for small amounts of marijuana and are before the courts. Chair of the youth arm, Angela Hart, made a statement at a press conference today.
We are making a public call to the government to declare a moratorium on all arrests for small amounts of marijuana. We believe that this would clear the backlog in the judicial system. We also believe that this would save the state millions in tax dollars instead of enforcing a law which, by and large, targets a crime without a victim.
Hart said to date the government has not given a firm statement with respect to the decriminalization of marijuana.
How can the government spend millions in tax dollars for 2 months of public consultations, listening as marijuana advocates painstakingly describe the dangers of criminalization, only for the government to boast that we would be enforcing the very laws that we want to repeal?
Additionally, one representative of the All Mansions of Rastafari said there has been insufficient information given on the scope of the proposed legislation.
Being one of the main stakeholders representing the Rastafari body, we still do not know what is the scope of the government's decriminalization program. And at this point in time, up to now, we have not been called to discuss anything, so we don't know what's going on.
Legislation targeted at marijuana decriminalization should be introduced in Parliament by mid-2019. Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley made a statement earlier this year. His comments followed Attorney General Faris Al-Wari, who said legislation on the decriminalization of marijuana will be laid in Parliament in the first half of 2019. Sure.
Coming up in Caribbean Newsline, at least 15 Haitians die in another attempt to migrate illegally. The details after the break. At least 15 Haitians are dead after a twin-engine boat capsized off the Turks and Caicos Islands on Sunday. The Royal Turks and Caicos Police reported that the bodies had been recovered and 14 survivors have been rescued so far. Acting Turks and Caicos Police Commissioner Trevor Bottin says at this stage it's unclear how many people were aboard the vessel when the accident occurred in shark-infested waters. This is the second major accident at sea involving Haitians this year, as citizens of that CARICOM nation leave their country for a better life in the United States, the Bahamas, and the Turks and Caicos Islands. In February, at least 28 Haitians died when their boat capsized off the northern coast of the Bahamas. Well, over in Haiti, opposition political parties that have been staging street demonstrations demanding the removal of President Jovenel Moïse from office have refused to hold talks with the embattled head of state on Monday. André Michel, the leader of the so-called Democratic and Popular Movement, says they're not interested in a meeting on the formation of a new government. They just want Moïse to go. The party, led by former President Jean-Bertrand Aristide, also refused an invitation from the palace to attend the deliberations. President Moïse also invited Moïse Jean-Charles, leader of the Petit Desselin party, to a meeting on April 3rd, focused on consultations leading to the formation of a new government. But Jean-Charles said his party is not in dialogue or negotiations with President Moïse. They want a clean slate and are demanding the departure of the head of state and the resignation of all parliamentarians. He says the formation of a new government is not the solution to the crisis. Representatives of 16 chambers of commerce across the region came together in Barbados on Monday to officially launch a network aimed at promoting trade and investment in the Caribbean and with other international trading partners, among other things. The network of Caribbean Chambers of Commerce, CARICHAM, will also seek to determine the best mechanism to represent the interest of the private sector on regional and international issues, foster innovation and strategic collaboration among members to increase the global competitiveness of the region's industries, and share experiences and best practices in areas such as trade and investment, renewable energy efficiency, disaster risk reduction, and climate change. The launch occurred at a two-day meeting, the start of a two-day meeting at which participants will review and finalize an action plan that is intended to guide CARICHAM's work. The launch of CARICHAM is being supported by several stakeholders, including the United Nations Officer of Disaster Risk Reduction, the European Union, the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, the Department for Emergency Management, the Caribbean Media Corporation, the CARICOM Secretariat, Compete Caribbean, and the Caribbean Export Development Agency. Health officials encourage parents to vaccinate their children, and One Children's Agency tackles the effects of emotional and psychological abuse of children. The details in this week's Newsline Health.
Health officials in the Caribbean are stressing the importance of vaccines following the re-emergence of a number of diseases that were once considered eliminated. There is growing concern over the health of the region's children as cases of preventable diseases grow internationally, as more parents are choosing not to vaccinate their children. But Senior Medical Officer for Chronic Diseases in Grenada, Dr. Sonia Nixon, says St. George's will continue to safeguard the health of its children.
Life expectancy for the female in Grenada, if you're born today, is 75 years. For a male is 72 years. Yes, and they're mitigators, but the ones that we can eliminate, we should. So that's why we talk of vaccinating against preventable diseases. Measles, mumps, rubella, whooping cough. You see people dying in first world countries of whooping cough. You know, and they are highly preventable.
Any form of abuse will take its toll on the health of its victim. As Trinidad observes Child Abuse Prevention Month in April, the Children's Authority will be focusing on the impact of emotional and psychological abuse. Director Sophia Noel says such abuse is prevalent in the country.
We have a propensity to use name-calling to denigrate persons and children. Sometimes we call them stupid and worthless or whatless, as we say. Sometimes we negatively compare them to siblings. Why you are not as behaved as your sister. And what we find happening sometimes is that as parents, we often, when we are upset with another partner, when we're in a broken relationship, we say you are like this like your father or like this like your mother. And all of that are those are forms of abuse.
Marie-Claire Williams, Newsline Health.
Ahead in sport, former West Indies head coach Phil Simmons breaks his silence on events that occurred during his tenure. Stay with us.
Talk as we gear up for the 2020 election cycle, but this battle is going to be between capitalism and socialism. You have a looming showdown between the definitive capitalist President Trump and whomever emerges from the crowded Democrat field. More people are embracing socialism as a political platform, led by people like Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. The promise of free health care, free college, free this, free that.
Wilson Harris gripped me like few other writers have. And when Channel 4 asked me to set up a company to produce documentaries for them, one of the first people I chose was Wilson Harris. He was amazed. And he said, tell me something honestly, why do you want to make a documentary about me? I said, because you're very difficult and it's a challenge to put you on the small screen.
Their championship match last fall at Sonoma was epic. The champ, now five-time title holder Scott Dixon, doing everything needed, running second in the race to hold off the challenger Alexander Rossi. Rossi, with 3 wins on the season, had to fight back from early adversity.
Rossi finds himself sliding back here.
Front wing is broke. 42 front wing tires, get back for the program.
He put on a grand charge from the back of the field, coming up just short.
To sports now. Former West Indies head coach Phil Simmons has broken his silence following his removal from the post back in 2016, highlighting a litany of woes that took place in cricket West Indies under Dave Cameron's leadership. Simmons, who now leads the Afghanistan cricket team, took issue with the former administrator's style of leadership, saying that Cameron had taken things too personal with him and the players. In a telephone interview with I-95.5 FM's Andre Errol Baptiste in Trinidad and Tobago over the weekend, Simmons revealed that there were occasions where he had been left in the dark about the details of meetings with the selection panel and the president's involvement in the selection of players. The Trinidadian also took issue with the selection of Richard Pybus as interim head coach, questioning the Australians' claim to fame.
In 4 years of cricket, in 4 years of DOC, your claim to fame is that you set up the professional league, right? Yes. But the professional league has been set up, and again, Alan said it the other night. What has improved other than players getting paid? What has improved?
Simmons also revealed that the relationship between him and the board broke down when he was told key senior players were not allowed to play for the squad following the botched Indian tour 3 years ago.
We select what we thought at the time was the best 22 white ball cricketers we had, including Gale, Pollard, Barber, everyone. 2 days after the selection, Pybus sends an email. He's not happy with the 22 we selected. So he wants to have a meeting. All right, that's the prerogative of the DOC, Director of Cricket. Next day, I get another email. Oh, the president, the vice president, and the CEO are involved in this meeting. So I'm like, again, this is starting again. And that meeting went on for nearly 3 hours because they were talking about the fact that, hey, no, we can't pick these guys because they were in India and whatever. Some really hairy brain reasons, but you can see it's personal things.
6 wickets between pacers Eva Giddings and Akezie Thompson helped Ghana pull off an upset win by 20 runs over Jamaica as action in the women's T20 blaze continued over the weekend. Giddings took 3 for 13 from her allotted 4 overs and Thompson bagged 3 for 16 from 3.4 overs as the Jamaicans, chasing 115 for victory, were bowled out for 94 in 18.4 overs in the opening match of the day's triple header at the Ghana National Stadium. Captain Stephanie Taylor struck 6 fours and 1 6 in the top score of 48 from 57 balls and shared 49 for the 5th wicket with fellow West Indies women's player Chanel Henry to lead a recovery for the Jamaicans after they slid to 19 for 4 in the 6th over. No other Jamaican batsman reached 20 and the visitors lost their last 6 wickets for 26 in the space of 28 balls as off-spinner Shanetta Grimman took 2 for 18 from 4 overs to hasten the decline. In the second match on the cards, another notable all-round performance from Windies women's all-rounder Hayley Matthews kept Barbados on track for the championship double with a 7-wicket victory over Windward Islands. Matthews, the Barbados captain, took 3 for 18 from 4 overs with her off-spin as the Windwards, deciding to bat, reached 131 for 4 from their 20 overs. A stand of 66 unbroken for the 4th wicket between the Windies women's pair of all-rounder Deandra Dottin, not out on 42, that included 4 fours and 2 sixes from 29 balls, and left-hander Kishona Knight, not out on 20, carried the Barbadians over the finish line with 7 balls to spare. In the nightcap, discarded Windies women's all-rounder Stacey Ann King led a successful runs chase with 43 not out as Trinidad and Tobago logged a convincing 9-wicket victory over Leeward Islands. Chasing 67 for victory, King slammed 8 fours from 25 balls as TNT reached their target with 75 balls remaining. Earlier, Leandra Ramdeen and Felicia Walters both pocketed 2 wickets as the Leewards were dismissed for 66 in 18 overs with no batsman reaching 20. Barbados made a strong start to the Caribbean Netball Association's Jean-Pierre Youth Championship over the weekend. They have installed themselves as favourites after comfortably winning their first 2 matches in the championship, which is being contested at the YMCA courts in the heart of Antigua and Barbuda's capital, St. John's. Goal shooter Sumara Ben, coming off the bench, scored 13 goals from 14 attempts. Goal attack Shiara Chase with 11 from 14, and starting goal shooter Dahlia Knight, 11 from 17, as the Barbadians started the championship with a 35-22 victory over Caribbean sporting arch rivals Trinidad and Tobago on Saturday. Ben starting the second game and Chase failed to improve their shooting percentages, but finished with 24 from 29 and 9 from 12 respectively to leave the Barbadians to a 35-22 victory over Dominica on Sunday. In other notable results, St. Lucia made a positive start to the championship in their only match so far, flogging the hosts 43-8, led by goal attack Dasha Eugene's 30 from 33. The Antiguans have endured a horrific start to the tournament, losing all 3 games and also failing at the hands of Dominica 40-11 in Friday's opener and Grenada 46-9 on Sunday. In the closest match of the championship so far, Bermuda overcame patchy shooting to prevail 24-23 over Grenada. The championship continues every day this week until Thursday. And finally, Bermuda's former triathlon world champion Flora Duffy has recovered from a foot injury and will defend her title against a strong field of elite athletes when the World Triathlon Series WTS returns to the island for its 2nd year next month. Nearly 500 elite and age group athletes are so far booked to race in Bermuda on April 27th, and the Bermuda Triathlon Association is confident the number will rise before the registration deadline of April 15th. Duffy stormed to a convincing win with a lead of almost 2 minutes in last year's event. The 31-year-old was an absentee in this season's WTS opener in Abu Dhabi earlier this month because she said she did not feel 100% ready to go. Duffy plans to bow out of WTS racing after the 2021 Grand Finale scheduled to be held in Bermuda. In the meantime, her major goal is to go for triathlon gold at next year's Olympic Games in Japan. She finished a disappointing 8th at the last Games in Rio de Janeiro in 2016. And that's the sport. We'll be right back.
Caribbean Newsline is brought to you by the Barbados Tourism Marketing Inc.
But it must break. Hold on to your lips. Oh no, we're ready for the feeling. No, we're never gonna be let down. No, we're ready for you, and nobody can tell me now. I'm waiting. Like this now, them watching me like Netflix. Now leave them in the silence. Them wait for me to bring the vibes. Jamaican people.
As March 16th approaches, the date set for Buju Banton's first show in Jamaica in over 10 years, his co-manager, Donovan Germain, is hailing the artist's exceptional talent. Germain, who has managed Buju for decades and produced several hit songs with him, told the media that, musically, Buju Banton has done the mind-boggling. It is the norm for artists who have not performed for an extended period to take a while before they can tune their voices to sing their songs in the same keys as before their hiatus.
Again, the major developments of this day, Antigua and Barbuda's Prime Minister says Liat's future is a bit brighter with the needed restructuring able to proceed after workers agreed to accept a pay cut. And in sport, former West Indies head coach Phil Simmons breaks his silence on events that occurred during his tenure, and he's critical of former CWI President Dave Cameron. And that's Caribbean Newsline for news and sport around the clock. Subscribe to canonnews.com for more of our programming. Log on to caribvision.tv and check out our YouTube channel. We'll be back here again tomorrow, but from all of us at CMC News, thank you for watching and good night.